Welcome back. You're such a desirable audience this morning. Very vibrant feedback coming in, including this one for you, Makali. So I'll read it to you. Fondo from Kaloleni in Kilifi says, the jobs you're calling casuals is where the money is. A mason earns more than a teacher. But part of...
That's okay. Are those
Accepted?
jobs lasting or short term? That's the figures. We need to probe the figures. When you talk about 740,000 jobs, what is the caliber of the job? Is it a permanent job? Is it a short-term job? 2 week, 1 month? That kind of thing.
Well, part of the feedback also that you've been sending in today has touched on corruption and how exactly your ministry, if at all, plays a supervisory role as to how exactly governors use their cash. And also with the seeming strained relations between central government and devolved government, how exactly will you be able to audit the kind of projects that they're getting into and make sure that it's not being duplicated with what perhaps central government is doing?
Okay, with regard to expenditure and corruption issues, the primary responsibility for oversighting the county executive is the county assembly. So the county assembly is the primary institution. Then we have the Senate.
That's where the problem is.
Then we have the Senate, which now intervenes, and I'm sure you have seen that when they have seen the auditor's report, and they can summon anyone, including the county government, to explain on 1 or 2 things. Now, we also sometimes get those reports from the counties, and when we do, we refer them to the relevant institutions, because we have the anti-corruption authority that is responsible for ensuring there's no corruption across the country at both levels, both the national and the county level. So what I can say is that there are very many eyes watching, and so it's very difficult to get away with anything. In fact, if I'm not wrong, I think the EACC announced the other day that they will be forwarding certain files on allegations, I think, of corruption at county level. And so we are waiting to see what the specifics of those files are. So I wouldn't be very concerned about that. Well, what we say is we tell the public to be vigilant, make sure that you get your information out, make sure your county assembly knows. If you suspect that there is malpractice, send the same information to the relevant institutions, EACC, if you feel more comfortable, the Senate, or wherever it is that you think the concerns will be addressed. But we are already addressing a few of the complaints that have come.
All right, let's go back to the...
But the experience is this, that in those counties where the county assembly members have not gone to bed with the governor, they are fighting to dislodge him.
Yes.
So the issue of oversight does not arise.
Actually, it does. You see, the fact that you have 1 or 2 counties having a problem doesn't mean that the other counties, don't forget there are 47 of them, are not playing their part, and their county assemblies are all having an issue. And sometimes the concerns are legitimate, sometimes maybe not. And that's why there are other institutions. So there is another level, there's a Senate. So even if you want to discipline your county executives, you still need to refer the matter eventually to the Senate. And then there is recourse to the accused. There is the courts. So, and we're seeing all these institutions playing their different roles, and I'm sure you have seen it has been quite an interesting last few months.
is disagreeing.
It's a sad situation. I mean, something good came called devolution, and people are happy to get resources at the grassroots and the local level. But that has come with a lot of baggage and corruption, the devolution of corruption to the counties, which are really the oversight role of the county assemblies, I don't think has reached any level we can boast about. And perhaps it's too early, but maybe with the audit report for this year, the auditor's report for this year, we'll begin to see the grand level of mismanagement or corruption, bad fiscal management that is happening at the counties. And so, I mean, as the ministry in charge of devolution, this should be things that filter to you, and then you look at what remedial measures we should take to either National Assembly or Senate, which is the prefect of those counties, to see what legislative measures, administrative measures ought to be implemented to bring the counties to account. Because ultimately, these are funds that are accountable at the national level by the national budget. So we can't say, well, we left it to the county government, because that's the level of mismanagement going on there. Even in the quiet ones, there is a collusion going on. I mean, the fact that they're quiet doesn't mean there's things going on.
Your office?
Let me say this, Makali. In terms of institutions and the laws to ensure that the structures are in place, I'll give you one good example, IFMIS. the integrated financial management system. When the county government started, there was a lot of resistance to using the system. We insisted that it has to be used because that's the only way to track expenditure. And it's the same standards that are required by the Public Financial Management Act, which the national government itself is expected to abide by. And so now county government, the reason why the Auditor General is able to go and do an audit is because there is a system in place which is uniform across all the counties. And it's also linked to the national government one, and therefore you can be able to audit. So in terms of institutions and systems, we have put the systems there. And we're ensuring that those systems are being implemented because the law requires that the systems are used. Administrative structures, again, the human resource. One of the reasons why we insisted that they use public servants is they use people who are familiar with the laws. And so we seconded a lot of the accountants and who know how to account, who know how to use and follow procedure according to the law. And then that makes it a lot easier as opposed to just starting with someone who's not familiar with how, for example, you should do a procurement or how you should, after spending money, how you should report on it. Now, systems are in place. Human resource capacity is in place. And the administrative structures are in place. In fact, my ministry has given to the Council of Governors the ideal administrative structure of a county government based on how a government runs. You know, it's like just the way the national government runs. And we've shown them how you would structure the different county executives, who you would have below them, who should be below those ones, what decisions they make.
I would agree with you, CS. I mean, the structures are in place, but the effectiveness of the checks and balances envisaged, or that those structures are supposed to perform, is what needs to be checked because they are not functioning. The structures might be in place, but I think the leakages, the loopholes, the shortcuts, and the whole infrastructure of those local governments is such that at the end of the day, perhaps that is what will sabotage. Because when you say Jubilee, okay, our government has achieved this percentage of growth, part of that budget, in fact, part of that county government ought to be accounting for that growth we're talking about. And as we have seen funds going down there, most of it is on paying staff and whatnot. The development expenditures are still very low. That's what I'm saying. I think perhaps it's time, as you continue to get feedback, you begin to think of how you can proactively intervene to bring fiscal discipline as well as proper use of just resource allocation.
I think on that issue,
without appearing to micromanage the counties.
In terms of issues of fiscal discipline, the systems are there. And that's why I even gave the example of the IFMI system, which is the National Treasury requires that every county uses. In terms of checks, the institutions that are supposed to check are in place. The Auditor General is there. That's why he provided a report. The fact that there's even that report tells you that the systems are there to check. You see, it would be a problem if there was complaints that there's mismanagement and there's no report whatsoever coming from anybody showing that there is any mismanagement.
Let's talk about another form of corruption. Please respond to Adeka in Nairobi. He's asking, could Madam Waiguru tell us what happened to the ghost workers? Who is behind it? Who pays? And who receives the payment?
Ghost workers are just that, ghosts, in the sense that they're not people you see. What happens is that you discover in the system that you have an individual who has multiple accounts. So you have the real one, maybe. There are two types of ghosts. One of individuals who existed and were supposed to have exited, but never quite got out of the system. Either they retired, they passed on, or they left the public service, or they are supposed to be on unpaid leave. But their names then continue to stay in the system and they continue to earn a salary. Then there is another type of ghost, which is where someone creates IDs of different individuals using somebody's, a particular person's data. So for example, you would have, if you're called Catherine Maweu, Catherine Mwikali Maweu, you would have like 10 accounts. One is Catherine Maweu, Mwikali Maweu, Catherine Mwikali, you know? But the ID numbers are the same, and the dates of birth you would probably find are the same. They can change or alter other statistics such as the employment. Now, that's what we discovered. And I want to start by saying we are the ones who discovered it. Nobody told us. I actually instituted an audit into the payroll when we were transferring the staff and discovered there was has been malpractice. How long has it been going on? For a long time, probably, because it doesn't look like it's something that has been instituted in the last 1 year. It's a practice that has been there for a long time. So what are we doing? Everywhere we have found them, they've been shut. The investigation's going on to trace the individual beneficiaries to those accounts. The reason we don't give details is because you don't want to jeopardize that investigation. There are banks involved, for example, in the sense that maybe the money goes to some bank. So you need information from that bank. So you don't start giving too many details before you have actually given the relevant institutions. So this matter is with the institutions that investigate. And the immediate thing that the government does is to stop paying, right? And then to freeze the accounts of that have been receiving that money, but most of the time they receive and completely clear it, and then now look for the individuals who are behind it. Some of them are obvious, some of them are not so obvious, because if it's something that has been running for the last 6 or so years, you'd have to go back to who was sitting on that particular desk on that computer 6 years ago or 7 years ago. So that's what we're doing. So investigations are ongoing. But
do you expect to find people in court? And
yes.
When?
Oh, you will find them. They will definitely, and quite a number. Yeah, so that's ongoing.
Is that one ministry or all ministries?
It's all ministries. It cuts across. The malpractice is in different degrees across government. So it is a practice that has been going on for quite a while.
Yeah, clearly Kenyans are waiting to see people behind the dock
They
and
will
perhaps to get figures in terms of funds that you've been able to recoup. But I want to go back to the question of the Uwezo Fund. Again, a lot of questions on it. People are asking how much has been disbursed? What are the success stories? How many individuals or groups have been able to access it? Why don't you just take us through it?
As of yesterday, 250 committees have been established. The exchequer release from the Treasury is 1.5 billion, which I authorized to start going to the accounts of the constituency. The accounts that have been opened by the constituencies where we have a problem because they haven't moved as fast as we had expected. In fact, I actually wrote another notification yesterday to both the patrons who are members of parliament and to the board to ensure that those accounts are open. I think by the numbers I saw yesterday, about 80 or so constituencies have opened accounts, and so they should start receiving. In fact, I've released to the press the allocation of the Uwezo Fund per constituency already. So there are some counties that have moved faster than others, like Garissa, for example, because we expected that to be the place where we will launch the first checks of the Uwezo Fund. They've moved a lot faster than other constituencies, but because we have very many constituencies, 290 of them, each constituency is moving at a different pace. So I would urge the youth groups that have applied to get Uwezo Fund from their constituency offices to urge your constituency committees to move faster. And also this message is to those who are responsible for those committees to ensure that they are requesting for their resources, because right now we have the resources. We just need a request from them.
Who are the laggards? Who's really lagging behind in terms of, operationalizing this fund at the constituency level?
In terms of which constituency or in terms of the individuals?
Constituencies.
I wouldn't want to name that.
Why do you want to protect them, Waziri? People are not accessing the money that they need.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is, let me not name the constituencies because, as I said, we already have gazetted about 250 of them, meaning 40 are not. They're trickling in for various reasons. Sometimes we don't gazette, not because they haven't given us names, but because there's a criteria. So if you give me, for example, I've said there should be a male youth and they give a woman youth, I send back the list and say, please make sure that you comply completely. So sometimes the gazetting of those committees is not so much because they are lagging, it's because they've done 1 or 2 mistakes. The second thing is in terms of the application for the loans, because it's a new fund, people are learning. Even the committees themselves have to learn that at this point now what we need to do is do evaluations. After we've done evaluations, we send the names to the board. Okay, then after I send the board, how do I ask for? So we even now, right now, there's training going on at the Mbagathi to ensure that the committees and the youth, our youth officers on the ground and our gender officers on the ground are helping the committees access these funds. What I can guarantee Kenyans is that the full 6 billion will be at the constituency level before the end of the financial year. Now, if you are an applicant, please follow up with the committees who are housed at the CDF offices to ensure that your applications are being reviewed and ask them where the money is, and also ask your members of parliament where the money for Uwezo is, because then they're the only ones who can make requests. You cannot force and pay into an account before you get a request for paying that money.
That's before June 30th.
Before June 30th.
Okay, well, talk about the youth fund a bit. There have been figures flying around, how much has gone out, allegations that the money hasn't been well used.
Yeah.
And then your own tiff apparent with the former chairman. What happened, really, to these exchanges?
Actually, there was no exchange. Was there an exchange?
He read of the
He
exchange.
said he wrote letters to you.
And that you didn't appreciate the functioning. That's what he alleged of the youth fund, which you're supposed to be overseeing.
Let me start by saying that government is about institutions, not individuals, and I would now completely want to move away from the individual. As a professional, I wouldn't want to discuss the deliberations of government proceedings in our boardrooms. That happens. What happens in there is supposed to stay in there, and if anybody leaks that information to the media, I think it's a very unprofessional practice. Having said that, government is in the process of making very many changes. I mean, there've been quite a number of new board appointments and chairs, and this was just one of those. It has nothing to do with any personal issues whatsoever.
It's okay to say he was ineffective because, or there was
why would you
an
feel
issue.
the need
Why,
to replace him?
otherwise, I mean, this is a public position. He was appointed. He was fired. There has to be a reason for that. Otherwise, the government would be working in darkness.
There are reasons, but those reasons are not necessarily supposed to be said in the media. I will not give the reasons as to why.
But you believe Uwazi is one of the pillars of the Jubilee government. You should be able to tell us
And the right to
exactly
information
why
is crucial.
certain officials are being removed.
Not necessarily. I mean, we serve at the pleasure of His Excellency. He has his own decision-making process. He makes those decisions to the best of his ability, and he doesn't have necessarily to explain why he appoints or removes individuals. That I will not explain on the issues of individuals. That I will not do. In terms of the youth fund, in the management of the youth fund, there have been challenges, and the challenges are known. In fact, there have been complaints even amongst themselves as a board. They have penned complaints, including to the EACC. So there are certain things that are already even in the process of being investigated. And so that's ongoing. And the relevant institutions is taking the relevant measures to look into those concerns that have been raised and ensure that we take remedial measures. What we are doing ourselves is to make sure we are strengthening what we have seen a complaint, to put measures so that we don't have the challenges. But in terms of operations, they're moving on. The fund has been in operation for quite a number of years, and so there are ongoing loans, and so those loans are being serviced. Youth continue to benefit. In fact, from the numbers that I have, last year they managed to give out at about 800 million shillings. To various youth groups. That's the statistics that we have, and so we are.
Again, the loans are being, or the grants are being given at the district level. The structures. What are the structures like for guys who don't know how to go about it out there?
Usually, if they make the applications, the youth fund usually works through financial institutions. And that's why we created Uwezo. Uwezo is different because it goes straight to the constituency, so you don't have to go through. So you look at different products, and the products target different kind of entrepreneurs or individuals. What happened is that there were complaints about even the interest rates. If you remember, they were saying that the interest rates that are being given by the intermediary institutions are a bit high. And so we created another fund which deals with the people who can't afford to go through the financial intermediaries. And so the long and short of it is that the fund is now, again, being operationalized as it should be. There is a proposal to restructure, which we are looking into, to ensure that it's more effective. In fact, there is a proposal to merge all the funds together and then provide the different products under one management structure, as opposed to having three management structures, and that we're looking into. So we hope to have a proposal. It's actually one of the proposals by the parastatal reforms, but we'll wait and see what the outcome of that is and how that would impact the ongoing facilities.
All right, so I want to you to respond to a question from Seth in Homa Bay. He's asking about nepotism and asks you whether you're aware that this is happening at the county level in terms of job recruitment and what your ministry is doing about it.
We've gotten complaints, but the law actually requires that when the county governments are recruiting, they ensure that there's diversity and that the various communities in those counties are actually represented. Where they've not complied, again, the first stop is the county assemblies and then the Senate. But these are some of the things that we raise when there's a summit meeting. And then you agree on what remedial measures that they will take. But you need statistics. We can't just say there is nepotism without having statistics that actually demonstrate that this is happening. Previously, I think the National Cohesion would be responsible for that, but now there are other commissions that are looking into it and collecting the data, and once we have the data, we will require that they comply, because that is a requirement by law. It's not actually a requirement of the national government, but they will be required by the law to comply, and that law will be enforced by the various institutions. So we are looking to see how to address that. There have been some complaints, but it's not everywhere.
You have seen the Ways of Fund, only 1.8 has been dispersed.
One is, I have an exchequer relief myself. I'm holding 1.5 billion. I need to give it to the constituencies, but they need to request for. There's a process of requesting.
At that rate, 6 billion will not be spent.
It will, because what happens that when they start, they all come at the same time. You see, the process is usually to put up the institutional framework in place, and then to evaluate the proposals. That's what take time, and decide who is benefiting, because we don't want to give money and they haven't even decided to who it's going to. So for you to request for that money, you have to attach a document that says we have approved this group to receive this much and this group to receive this much. We just don't give the money to the constituency. It was just to give, that you can do by pressing just a button. But because there are systems in place, it will take time. But what happens, because as I said, about 250 are already in the process of evaluating these proposals, and they're going to start, about 80 accounts have been opened. You probably find in another 1 week or so, they'll have opened another 100. That's what happens. And then they will start requesting. And definitely, I don't think there's any constituency which will not request for their full allocation.
So that money was intended for elections, but the election didn't take place. Those are the 6 billion shillings were given to the youth.
Yes.
What happens when it's exhausted? When
It's a revolving fund. It will not be exhausted, because when you borrow, you will pay back. And when you pay back, somebody else borrows. So it will continue growing.
With or without interest?
Right now, zero interest.
Zero interest.
All right, I'm told our time is almost up, so I'm going to come to my panel with their final questions to you, and then their assessment of your performance. So perhaps we can start with you, Makali.
Oh, you know, after sitting here with her, I'm likely to be generous. But let me say that.
But you're hoping that you won't. Go ahead.
Well, I think that her ministry has performed quite well. But in terms of the achievement of devolution that the country has had over the last 1 year, the biggest challenge, of course, lies in the things I was outlining much earlier on. The effectiveness of county governments in the management of their affairs and the resources that are being deployed to them, which I think is a big issue, and I think I still hold the view that the government needs to intervene there in certain ways, technically, without appearing to be fighting devolution. Which she didn't, perhaps she'll mention as she gets out signs out, was a story about ASAL areas which are under her ministry, suffering from an apparent reluctance by donors, because those areas have traditionally been supported by donor funding, NGOs and so forth, and there was a certain I think chill in relations with the West, where the donors mainly come from, to support those areas. I wonder what kind of interventions are going there, because those areas are always in need in terms of education, all manner of interventions. Otherwise, I think, well, good job, good job.
All right, please respond to this question.
Yeah.
On the ASAL, so far, there hasn't been any withdrawal of any development finance. In fact, they continue to support. there are quite some donors that are very aggressive in supporting in terms of both education, health, and also even providing food relief in terms of cash transfers to very needy homes. So those programs are still ongoing. Having said that, the government is also heavily investing in the ASAL areas, heavily investing. Even just with the money for under the National Youth Service, a good portion of it goes to support that area in terms of construction of water pans and dams and those kind of things to ensure that those areas are cushioned from the adversities that have been common in the last couple of years. So in terms of the West, I'm not aware. We are still financed by the same development partners to the same amount. In fact, there are many more negotiations that are still ongoing in terms of financing. What we are encouraging is restructuring of finance to support also county governments to be the ones held responsible to implement some of these programs, because these functions have now been devolved. Right. And for example, where the functions were being carried out by national government and these areas were considered marginalized, a lot of the times, like in the health sector, they would use, for example, civil society organizations. But now we have county governments in those areas. So what we're encouraging development partners is to support these county governments to enhance their capacities to deliver, because those are the right institutions according to law to deliver health. So that's what we're doing, and so far there hasn't been any interruption in terms of support.
We'll take your assessment of her performance, and perhaps a final question.
She's doing a good job. My only concern is about development of corruption. County, we got devolved, and we thought that we are not creating 47 presidents. What's happening in the counties that the governors have assumed their presidents, and therefore their counties, they have 10 vehicles following them. And I think that's, and again, we have heard the stories in the newspaper yesterday that they are coming to Nairobi to hire some offices at Delta House in Westlands, whereas they should have an office, maybe a government office, where they can coordinate their activities in Nairobi. I think the problem is just that hatred of the public, knowing that these people, they are becoming a disruption of systems instead of being assisting. They close the roads when they want to pass a place. They are bumpers. I think that's what the public is not interested in.
True. I don't think the public would be interested whether it's the county government or those in the national government who do that. And I think what we are encouraging everybody in the public service is to remember that this is a public service. We are here to serve, not to do anything else. And I think even just by looking at the standards, even of cabinet ministers, we drive small cars, Passats. We only get followed where there are security concerns. We don't have many vehicles. And
no chase cars? No?
We do where there is need. Not everybody has. There have been specific requests according to need. But it's not like 3 lines of no.
Even the president does not.
He doesn't. We are encouraging as much as possible, and I think we will. From what we've seen, there's a settling in that area. I think this is expected in any new transition, that there would be certain interpretations, and based on the reactions and adjustments of Kenyans, it's actually Kenyans who will decide what will happen. I'm sure you have seen the various bills already being tabled to address these concerns, and so we'll wait and see. It will be played by the ear. Let's focus on what's important, which is public service, and let's hold them accountable on the things that matter, which is are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? Are we spending what we should be spending on the right things? If somebody is spending money in the wrong areas, let the public be vigilant, say it. Nowadays they say it anywhere. They tweet, they will send the information to the media. It's quite an interesting time to be in the public service. And so knowing everybody is watching you, I guess everybody will adjust to ensure that they're realigning. On devolving corruption to the counties, all institutions are aware that there are risks, that we admit that there are certain risks, but we've also put very stringent measures in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. And you can't get away with anything nowadays. If one institution lets you go, there are another 4 that can investigate the same. So knowing that, it's impossible to compromise 4 institutions. And so I wouldn't be too concerned. All I would say is the public, again, needs to be vigilant. Make sure that you raise the concerns that you see, especially if these concerns are legitimate. Again, staying away from also people who take the opportunity to do a lot of witch hunting, which is unnecessary. But we are, as a national government, concerned not just about counties, even about ourselves at our level, to ensure that we are not encouraging corruption. So it's not just about counties and devolving, but even ourselves, are we using those systems? Are we as accountable? And the same standards, I keep saying, that we expect of the counties, the same ones that are held to us. And so the same systems, the same laws are applied. And so all of us as public servants should be aware of that and ensure that we are working only in the public interest.
Madam Waziri, a good note on which to end. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to host you. My thanks to my panel as well, David Makali and Mutegi Njau. I've been your host, Anne Kiguta, sitting in for Udwa Kamimo. She'll be back with you next week. But that's it for us today. Have a wonderful day.